Happiness. My name is Tam, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Erin Shimone.
Welcome back. Hi. I'm so glad to be back.
So we've kind of got to a year, right?
Yes.
We've got to a year mark, and I feel like I've noticed that I'm like, hobby, check. Boom. Hobby, check, boom. Like I'm doing like this whole dirty jobs experience, right? Where I'm basically trying all these things and reporting on it. And I'm having the time of my life. I love doing it, right? But for anybody who's been really paying attention, they would notice that Erin started like that. And then Erin slowly didn't do that.
Right.
And I don't think that we've ever really talked about on our show how you have kind of like I think we've noted in the beginning that you and I have different reasons for why we started this podcast, right? Why we wanted to pull hobbies into our life. And I feel like we've really drilled in what's up with me, but Erin, we haven't drilled in so much about your hobby journey. And I just feel like it's time that you have the microphone to just kind of share how you started this journey, kind of trying the dirty job style of hobbies, and how that really isn't where you're at anymore. You're actually kind of in a totally different headspace.
No, that's so true. I have definitely pulled back from just dabbling in a lot of different hobbies. I feel like my hobby journey has been very evolving. I agree. When we started, it was wanting to try new hobbies and just put ourselves out there and find space for our own time. And because we weren't getting that. You know, we were just work, mom, hustle. Yeah. Like we had nothing else. We were not, we were just didn't feel comfortable even asking for the time for ourselves when we first started, you know. And I think for me, it was, I guess, building up that resilience and that comfort level of asking for the time for myself and in whatever way necessary, you know. And so we started by experimenting with hobbies in this podcast. And, you know, I definitely tried a lot of things that were fun. And I still, you know, when things present themselves to me, I want to try different things. I'm definitely way more open to trying new things. And I love hearing about your hobbies. And if something sparks my interest, I, you know, want to try it. But I think that I'm in a place where so busy in life and this phase of our life, I just want to do less, I guess, you know? And I found a few things that have really feed like are what I like to do, and I don't know that I want to necessarily keep adding things or keep trying things, because it almost makes my life feel more chaotic when I keep trying to try all these different things. And you know, we all only have so much time in our week, and I have about 4 things now that I'm really pretty religious about doing, and to add anything more to that almost feels overwhelming.
Yeah. So what are those 4 things then?
So obviously this podcast. That's a huge one.
That means me.
I mean, that is literally like the elephant in the room. It's like the ultimate hobby, right? Is this podcast. And I love it. So, and, you know, so we spend a few hours every month. Well, you know, we're more than that really, because we're talking about it constantly and ideas and coming up with ideas and preparing for it, and then having time to record.
The socials,
which is
all heavy
that.
on your side.
So it's ongoing, you know. But I love that. So that podcast I feel like has become a hobby in itself, and that's, you know, checked that box. And then, you know, I on another episode we talked about how I now do these short 10-minute hobbies at work. So on my lunch break, I walk or do yoga for 10 minutes, and that has really helped to break up my work days. And then on my non-work days, I am really big into audiobooks. Well, really every day I do some audiobooks.
That's great.
Every day. In my commute to work.
Brilliant.
Which is, you know, not 20 minutes each way. And then before I go to bed, I turn on an audiobook.
Do you really?
Yep.
How long do you listen for? Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. No, it's totally fine. I usually do 20, like, so you can put a timer on your audiobook.
What?
Yes. You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah. So I usually put like 20 minutes on, because I know that's probably like, I'll probably fall asleep and I'm going to forget.
What?
Yes.
That's so brilliant.
Yeah. So I usually do it, because it actually helps me fall asleep, unless the book's really
good.
But a lot of times I don't even remember what I listened to. and then I've got to go back. But then, you know. So, but yeah, so audiobooks, I'm like almost every day, those I'm constantly listening to audiobooks. And then I've really gotten into romanticities is what they're called.
Oh.
So romantic fantasy.
Like what?
Well, we talked about, the ACOTAR, the A Court of Thorns and Roses series.
I now am privy to knowing what that means now. Yes.
And then the Onyx or Fourth Wing series.
Oh, I don't know
So that's
one.
like dragons and
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
Love it.
I kind of gone down that path. So those are, anyway. And then my fourth one is like I pretty religiously exercise. I do like these set workout classes 3 to 4 times, on pretty much all my off work days.
I love that.
Yeah. So, and then, I feel like I've kind of hit all these boxes of like my mind, body, and soul, like.
Oh, yeah, you could.
Like exercise and then the podcast, I feel like feeds my spirit, my
that makes
soul.
Me happy.
Yeah. And then mind, the audiobooks and just learning, Sometimes I do, and I don't always do fiction. Sometimes I do nonfiction, but so yeah, I feel like those 4 things are my like core hobbies.
Yeah,
and I do them like that alone is a few hours every week, and that's about all I feel like I have time for.
But okay, so
well, more than a few hours, but an hour every day. A couple hours every day, really.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you pointed out how like you feel like you found like a hobby that hits like all like your basic needs. You said your mind, body, and your soul, right? Like so those are your needs. It's interesting because I always had heard that they always say that you should have like it's a hobby that's gosh, what did they say? It's a hobby. You're supposed to have 3 hobbies. One that brings you joy, one that you can make, and then one that makes money or something like that. And I've always hated that because I feel like I come from a place where I don't think your hobbies necessarily need to make you money. And so sure. I would get hung up on that phrase because of that one and be like, I don't think you should have all of that, right? I'm like, you should just have one hobby. But, now kind of going through and experiencing and exploring hobbies, I definitely think there's a place for multiple hobbies to the point that you mentioned where it's like, you can have a hobby that speaks to like your mind, one that speaks to your soul, one that speaks to you physically. Yeah. And I have to applaud you in the fact that you are so self-aware that even in a podcast is designed to look for hobbies and explore hobbies and try those. You know yourself enough that once you found where you hit that meter, right, of like what you were capable of doing, you took that step and did it really naturally.
Yeah,
like it never.
No, that's so true. I didn't really think it wasn't planned out. It kind of just came to a point where I was like, gosh, I feel like I'm forcing trying hobbies, and why does that feel like that, And then I started to reflect on it more and realize, I just feel like my cup is full. Maybe a little bit,
great.
Yeah. And I also feel like it still works with the podcast because this podcast is so much more than just trying hobbies. As we talk about a lot of issues with moms and women and social issues and things that just about self-care. So
absolutely,
I think it's just
well, I think
all encompassing.
Well, yeah, but I also, with that being said, like I feel like you're kind of walking the talk, right?
True,
you're showing that like how just simply implementing hobbies in your life, just those couple, right, were enough to make you feel like you're hitting all of the areas in your life that you felt like you're missing prior to this podcast.
Yeah.
And now you're like moving forward with that skill set in your toolbox, right?
Well, that's a good point because when I started saying like I do feel like I have, because of this journey and where I'm at now, like the really cool thing is like the behind the scenes stuff that's come about is like I do feel and that's where you're going with this, but I do feel very comfortable, like way more comfortable than I ever did, like asking for time. Not that I mean, or like sharing time with my husband, like seeing, he has his time and I have my time, and I feel way less guilty about it than I did a year ago. That's awesome. For sure. I feel like anytime I'm like, oh, I shouldn't do that, I'm like, no, you need to do this for yourself, and almost 90%, 95% of the time, 100% of the time, I'm like glad that I took that time.
That's great.
Almost never regret it. And I feel like a year ago, I just would get in a paralysis of not doing anything because I felt like I didn't want to ask for the time. I had all this mom guilt, and I just, I think because going through the motions of trying all the different hobbies and just putting ourselves out there has like helped me overcome that hurdle. And then the other thing I've noticed is that I feel like I'm just a lot more prone to trying things, like even in put in the situation. It's kind of always in the back of my mind of like, it's not so scary to try new things.
Yay,
you know what I mean? Yeah. I know when we went on to Florida recently, and we unfortunately didn't get to, but I was like, I want to try a surf lesson, and I normally wouldn't like a year ago, I probably would not have wanted to do that because it's uncomfortable and you're going to get salt water in your face, you know. But I really did, and unfortunately, it didn't work out with the kids. But I feel like I never even would have proposed that as an option, you know, over a year ago. So
Erin,
I feel like,
you're basically our success story.
No,
I don't know if you know this, but this podcast actually was a huge, giant
science experiment
to test on you to see if I could take your average busy millennial mom
there you go,
and turn her into a successful, well-rounded individual.
That's right. Here I am.
There you go. No, you're doing such a good job, Erin. Like I love hearing the fact that like you were wanting to try something new, including getting eaten by sharks as a surfer.
Right.
Like that makes me so happy for you that you had like the courage to not only want to try it, but also like the first thing that came to your mind wasn't, you know, well, my family probably, you know, would need me on the beach. Right. We should have Adam go do the surfing, right? Yes. It was like, I didn't hear you say that. I was going to pull everybody with me. You're like, I want to surf. Yeah. I want to go try to surf. Right. I feel like that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
I think it really, again, I just think you're the success story that just shows that like it doesn't have to be like your journey of like exploring hobbies to figure out what works for you as a millennial mom didn't have to be the same journey that I took as a millennial mom, exploring hobbies and how they go. You know, you kind of figured yourself out really fast as far as knowing that you just wanted a couple of key areas to be touched, and you really wanted to work on having that mom guilt, which it sounds like that's really improved.
Oh, huge.
Yeah,
way less.
Like, do you feel like it's still there, or do you feel like it's totally gone?
It depends on the week. You know, I feel like this past week was harder, just for example, because I felt like it was just a really busy week, and I just was homeless, and, you know, I just felt a little more of that guilt. But it just depends on the week, you know. Some days, you know, it's still there. Yeah. It still pops up, but I feel like I have way better tools to manage it, and just reminders that, like, it's going to be okay.
That's wonderful.
It's going to be okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
I just think that's great. And I feel like, you know, there's a lot to be said of having somebody like you on this show and as a co-host, because I feel like you can really speak to that, like there's a lot of millennial women that are out there like you who are very much like, you know, my day, like I'm a business owner, I'm packed with all this time, and, you know, I just needed the core tools to kind of help me get past some of that guilt or that hang up, that chapter of your life that made you feel like you were just a mom and a businesswoman. That's it. Right. I do feel like it's helped pull me out of that mentality, definitely, and trying to like put myself first more. Not always, but definitely way more than before. And so that's helped my mental health, you know, and just helps me feel just better about life. I think too, it's just a phase of life, as you know, I'm not like saying this is all I'm going to ever do by any means, but it's all I can handle right now. And I think it's just giving yourself permission to do what you can do, and like really trying to tap into what makes you happy. That's what this is about, right? What makes you happy, what brings you joy. It shouldn't be burdensome to do this, to find hobbies that you like. It should be truly just manageable, and I don't know, whatever it looks like for you in your life. I like that. I really do. Erin, that makes me so happy to hear. Like, I'm just so happy that, like, I can tell that you have grown. I can tell that your energy is changed from a year ago, right? Like a year ago, like I feel like we both would agree that we were both just in this place where it was just like, something's got to change. Like this can't be it. This can't be it.
Definitely.
And you know, to the point, like we did this journey together, but separately at the same time, right? And I think we were supportive of each other. You were incredibly supportive of me and mine, as you know that I enjoy the chaos. Maybe I'm addicted to it, Erin.
I mean, I think that's something to speak to is that, and I know we've touched on this, and we are going to touch on this in another episode about personality types and human design and your hobbies, because I do think there's something to that. You know, different people need different things. So I think that whether an introvert or extrovert or, you know, whatever, all those different things factor in. So kind of figuring out what's best for you. You don't need to keep up with everybody else on Instagram, right?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I have a question, though. Just came to mind. Sorry to interrupt. you're feeling like you're coming out on the other side of this, right? Like you're coming out of this chapter and now you're starting to be more like, I'm not just a businesswoman and a mom. I'm also Erin.
Yeah,
and I like these things, right? Have you met anybody new since you've evolved into this person? Because we talked about how like meeting a new friend, like how we would talk to them. It was like, hi, I'm Tam. I work such and such place and I have 2 kids. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Which was, who wants to be friends with that person?
Right. Gosh.
So have you met anybody new that you could like that you can reflect on and say, did you introduce your hobbies to that person when you met that person?
That is a great question. The only thing that I don't feel like I'm put in a situation where I meet new people a lot, not like in a social setting. Like,
well, that means we need to go to our local bar this
I was going to say, yeah.
Have you met Erin?
I mean, I truly am like an introvert at heart. So like my job is very extroverted. So I feel like when I'm not at work, I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody.
You're sitting in a closet eating your bonbons.
But I will say that the one thing that comes to mind is we go on this vacation where it's like the same people every year.
Okay.
And that trip we take to Vermont.
Oh, yes.
And it's people repeat. So I do, like when we went on that, I did talk more about the podcast.
No way.
And which I probably wouldn't have before,
No.
And well, I wouldn't have talked about a hobby, but I definitely talked about the podcast.
Okay, which is your hobby.
So I feel like I talk to people about that more because that is like probably the main hobby outside of the normal things that I do. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a great question.
Did you feel like...
I think it's one of those things where it's like, you're like, it's uncomfortable. Like, are you going to judge me?
Oh, yeah.
Or are you going to...
I still get like this imposter syndrome.
Yes, I was just going to say the imposter syndrome is real still.
I still struggle with telling people, oh, yeah, I'm a podcaster. Because I'm worried to be like, of course you are. Right. You're a millennial woman.
Right.
Don't all millennial women
podcast. Yeah. So, I guess to answer your question, not really. I haven't experimented with that as much as probably, I think you have more than I have.
Yes.
Do you feel like you've talked to people? Are you opened up more to people about your hobbies and just talking in that sense?
Don't flip the camera back on me, Erin. It's you. Dang it.
It seems like whenever you've tackled a hobby, you kind of put yourself out there and start talking to people about it, right?
I will say, if we take the podcast piece out, because I don't know, I really do feel like with the podcast, I do feel like I have imposter syndrome still real bad about it. Like, even though this is a hobby of mine, right? This is and it's my favorite of my hobbies. I do feel that like, I don't know, that like there's... I guess I don't want to say embarrassed. That's not the word. I guess I just am worried that it would come off as like typical millennial woman.
Yeah, that filter is still there. Yeah. It's so hard to overcome that, like that fear of judgment.
Yeah. Really hard, and I mean, essentially, Erin, this is like a diary.
Yeah.
This is our diary that we're putting out there for people to hear. And so I think there's also this part of me that's like, because I am very aware that this is kind of a diary. I'm very okay with people that I'll probably never see hearing my diary because I'm like, I'll never know they're out there.
Right.
But if it's somebody that I know I'm going to see face to face, somebody who is probably most likely to listen to the episodes, I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I want them to know me like that yet. Yeah. So if I speak just to the podcast, no, I'm probably not telling a lot of people about that. But you're right. My other hobbies, I do find myself trying to be more open about those and talk about those with people. And I really haven't been enjoying. Like, I don't think if I met somebody new that I would walk up to me like, hi, my name's Tam. I collect Polly Pockets.
Right.
And I have 2 kids.
Yeah. But at least you have other things that you can talk about when you start to get into a conversation with somebody. Yes. And it can naturally flow. Versus like when you get the question, what do you like to do for fun? You had nothing before.
I had literally nothing.
So it's a little easier to have those conversations, right?
Oh yeah, I feel like I because I'm kind of more in the hobby arena, I feel like I don't have to go up to a person and be like, do you collect Polly Pockets? Right. I can just kind of go up to a person and I can kind of get to the hobby conversation just naturally. Like you said, just kind of being like, what do you typically do on weekends? Yep. Or, how do you ever play with your kids at all? Oh, you play with your other toys? Do you like Barbies, Hot Wheels? Oh, you like Hot Wheels? No way. Yeah. Like, what are you doing with Hot Wheels? Do you collect the Hot Wheels? Oh, you should.
I collect Polly Pockets. Yes. Yes. Like it can get there.
You know, like I think I feel more comfortable about navigating conversations about fun with people now because I feel like I'm more comfortable in that area. So the conversation seems more natural.
Definitely. And you can appreciate the fun of that hobby or something else, even if it's not the same one you are into.
I can absolutely appreciate, because I think before, especially when it came to my husband, I think I had a lot of jealousy to anybody who had hobbies. And I'd be like, and I didn't know what to ask because I literally had no point of reference. Yeah. Whereas now I have a point of reference and understand the joy, and I know I want people to talk to me about my hobbies. So I feel like other people probably want that too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I do think I'm trying to be better about that. But when it comes to the podcast, I definitely keep that under wraps.
Yeah. Maybe that's what we need to work on for 2025.
We probably should.
It's just our confidence.
I'm ready for Netflix to call and start a show on.
So yeah, bringing it back to just like my evolving hobby journey.
This is Erin's episode.
I guess like take home message in my brain is like, or in my mind is that, you know, more isn't always better.
Correct.
And you got to like listen to your body and your mind and like figure out what is best for that phase of your life. And you can always reinvent yourself and try something later. And,
absolutely.
You know, maybe in a year from now, I'm going to be chaotic hobby trier. I don't know.
God. Who knows? Well, let me pave the way for you.
Who knows, you know?
And then maybe I'll be switching and I'll be like, I got to pump the brakes, Erin.
Right. So, but I think it's just all about finding joy, making self-care time, you know, feeling like being your own person. Yeah. Finding out who you are as a person and that's
just being your honest, authentic self.
Yeah, exactly.
I really appreciate the fact that like we had this opportunity to like get you like the mirror on or the window, the lights, it's lights on you, Erin, because I obviously as behind the scenes, me and you were aware that you were evolving into a different path, but I don't know that we actually had a chance to like put that on the show and talk through how we're very aware that's what happened and what that looked like for you. So I really appreciate like you taking the time, walking us through it all, and you like as your friend, I can tell that you are in such a great place, and like you can tell that you feel more confident. You look like you feel more confident. I am just waiting for you to tell me one day that you started acting. I just went and saw Child's Play today. Oh yeah, and so like I'm like Erin could do that. I could see her up there. And I'll be the proud mama.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
I think you're doing such a great job, and I think, like I said, you're basically our success story, part one on our story and our show, right? Like you're showing our audience that it doesn't like putting hobbies in your life doesn't mean you put them to the point of exhaustion or like put them to the point where just as another thing that wears you down, right? Yeah. You find that right bit of harmony that makes you feel like you've rounded yourself off and found a way to fill your cup in the different areas of like mind, body, soul. And then that's where the real glory of having a hobby comes out of, right? Is fills your cup so that you can be the best version of yourself that then helps you be a better version for your family, and they feel that energy come from you, and that bleeds through the family.
Yeah, it's a win-win for everybody.
I agree.
Well said, Tam.
Well, sometimes I'll pull out a real thoughtful thing here and there.
It was great all the time. You're very thoughtful.
But thank you all for joining us today, and Erin, thank you again for sharing your journey, because you're just successful. Well done.
I'm so grateful for you and this podcast and our followers and listeners, and I hope that in some way we inspire you, and you'll join us for more next time.
See you next time.
Bye. Thank you for listening to The Art of Hobbiness. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And for more Erin and TM fun, be sure to follow us on all socials for behind-the-scenes footage on our journey to find hobbiness.